The May DAC is my favorite DAC, and it's hard for me to imagine it getting much better than this, but the Cyan 2 might maybe, just maybe, be better for a lot of audiophiles out there. And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, let's find out why that might actually be true. The first thing that we need to unpack here is that no matter how I spin this review, many folks will simply want me to get straight to the point, so I won't waste your time. The truth is, for folks who demand every single nugget of resolution to be exposed in the recording with the most analog-like experience, I still think, and I really do feel this way, that the May DAC is the way to go. However, and this is where things get a little bit tricky, if you want all of that smooth and silky analog sound without breaking the bank, well then, I might have just saved you a large chunk of change. The Cyan 2 is a one-and-done R2R DAC that strips the separate power supply, remote control, fancy pants display, and other bells and whistles of their big brother DACs, but at the same time, keeps the heartbeat and primary DNA of what makes these DACs sound so good intact. Being completely balanced and offering a ton of I/O flexibility, it seems to me that what Holo has done here is created what matters the most to most audiophiles, which is, at the end of the day, high performance at a reasonable price point. Taking a look at the Cyan 2 from the front, you are greeted with nothing to get really excited about. Outside of the logo and branding on the left, the only thing of interest to look at is the LED confirmations of the input and sampling rates that are enabled as the music plays, and that's about it. Taking a look at the business end, you have the option of one set of balanced or single-ended outputs, and to the right, a bank of digital inputs, with 5 different options being coax, I2S, USB, optical, and AES. The Cyan 2 does give a fair amount of I/O flexibility, and in my testing, I bounce between the USB and I2S inputs, but more on that in a minute. Last to the far right, there is an IEC inlet for power, and of course, a button for turning the unit on and off. The build quality of the unit is what you should expect from Holo Audio, and do not worry, beauty isn't only skin deep with the Cyan 2. Even the insides look like pieces of intricate jewelry. The unit is very heavy and made of metal, and the copper side panels give the Cyan 2 a clean and sophisticated look. My reference system for the Cyan 2 consisted of 2 different sources upstream. First, I connected my Enuos Zenith using Rune and the Enuos Sense app via USB. This yielded fantastic results and ended up being my go-to. However, I did try the Jay's Audio CDT Mark III transport using I2S, which also sounded absolutely stunning. In both setups, I tried the Cyan 2 using balanced connections into my reference Serene preamplifier, but also tried single-ended connections into the Electrocomponent ECI 80D, which has been an absolute joy to listen to. As far as speakers, I've been having a blast with the JR Research Bullies, which offer top-to-bottom full bandwidth resolution, and this setup has been perfect for establishing key differences between the Cyan 2 and my tried-and-true trusty May DAC. Kitsune tuned, level 3. The top dog, the big boy. That's the fight that the Cyan 2 has on its hands. So let's talk about it. Keeping this review as straight to the point as possible, the Cyan 2 is an incredible sounding DAC. I am blown away by how close it is to the May, and the differences I'll be talking about today are very subtle. To me, the May DAC sounds slightly more refined, a little more dynamic, and to my ears, slightly deeper in staging capabilities. Depending on the filter settings and the front end, I do think the May shines a more even-handed light on every single nugget of information and is a more versatile DAC, but outside of that, man, it's a fair fight. And again, these minor observations are exactly that. Very minor. So what's the differences between the two DACs and what's going on with the Cyan 2? Well, after careful and critical listening, I believe the Cyan 2 offers a slightly small lift in air in all things top-end extension. This almost adds a softer or air-like quality to the presentation. This observation is very minor, and while it can be heard in the sound clips that you guys are going to hear today, it's not night and day, and nothing that I want to spend a lot of time chatting about. Paying close attention to the overall presentation, it seems to me that it has a splash more concentration and energy with the Cyan 2 on the top octave. In contrast, the May DAC seems to offer a more mature balance across the entire bandwidth. It sounds incredibly refined and more at ease, and perhaps a little more meaty or textured. While the May DAC does offer different oversampling filter options which can radically change its presentation, even when NOS settings are applied, there is a more analog-like quality about the May DAC, but the Cyan 2 isn't far behind. In fact, I'd say we are splitting hairs at this point. Spending a fair amount of time paying close attention to cymbal hits and decay structure, that is to say, how long I can hear something ring out and how different pitches fit together, it seems to me that the Cyan 2 does lend itself to a little more emphasis on the air or the decay structure of the cymbal, where the May DAC showcases the same information with a little more ease. While the top end was a noticeable difference in my time with the Cyan 2, there were some other things that took shape as I got used to the DAC in my system. The soundstage, to me, isn't wider with either DAC, but does sound a little bit deeper with the May DAC. Again, with a little more air on top with the Cyan 2, I believe it trades some depth for I would say a mid-row experience. As for the heart of the music, whether it's mid-range or vocal presentation, I didn't notice a massive shift or change in the presentation. In fact, the only exception is hearing a small emphasis on S sounds, which can be a little more obvious with the Cyan 2. Now, I want to be clear here. Sibilance would be a bad thing. And if that's what was going on, I would call it out, but it's not what's going on. The S sounds still sound very natural with the Cyan 2, but at the same time, they do sound slightly more enhanced than the May DAC. So yeah, don't be discouraged here, folks. This is not a sibilant sounding DAC at all. And by the way, with a good set of headphones, you will clearly be able to hear this in the second song in the sound clips, and every single time that I hear it, it's getting easier for me to tell the two DACs apart. Either way, even with this minor emphasis on S sounds, there is an effortlessness of how both of these DACs present vocals, and both sound incredibly resolving. For me, hearing any key differences between the DACs was more in the stage itself or the ambience around a vocal, meaning the room that it was recorded in or the reverb added in post. That is to say, I'm going to stick with my guns in saying that only in the top end, in the details of the stage, is where I heard much of a difference in the DACs, and to me, nothing in the fundamental tone of the voice or instruments seemed to change at all from DAC to DAC. The last thing that I've noticed is that the May DAC to me sounds slightly more dynamic. That is to say, louder and quieter passages, deep bass impact, and all the things that go, heck yeah, and boom, seem to have a little bit more mileage with the May DAC over the Cyan 2. Now, this isn't really obvious in the sound clips, but after a number of listening sessions in the shed, I started picking up on this subtle difference. Don't get me wrong, both drop bombs with both of these DACs, and both sound insanely dynamic. But if we're talking about that last and final 0.5%, maybe at best, maybe 0.5%, the May DAC barely takes the lead. All right, time to bust out the headphones and let's give these DACs a listen. Both DACs were recorded using the wonderful sounding Electro Compagnie ECI 80D running into the GR Research Bullies. Mics used are Earthworks QTC 30s and my recorder is the Zoom F8N. All right, see you guys after the clips. By the way, these are probably the best sounding clips that I've ever captured. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let's go.
Engineer, where are you headed? Engineer, where are you headed?
No hubiera pensado que yo me iba a enamorar, jamás no quería saber nada más, nunca más. No hubiera pensado que yo me iba a enamorar, jamás no quería saber nada más, nunca más.
So yeah, I wasn't kidding. It's subtle, right? I mean, both DACs sound very good. And while I can tell some differences, there is only so much information that a clip can give to us. In the sound shed, these differences are quite a bit more noticeable, and I'd imagine with soundstage playing a role in the listening experience, it might be easier for anybody to tell these DACs apart. So please keep this in mind when evaluating the sound clips. Either way, what did you hear and what did you notice? I'll be curious about your listening impressions, so please take a minute and share your thoughts in the comment section down below. At the asking price of 1,200 smackaroos, the Cyan 2 is an unstoppable music machine that comes scary close to the May DAC's performance. While the May DAC does beat it in dynamic staging depth and does offer a little more of a relaxed and analog-like experience, it's also 4 times the price. Many folks out there who simply don't want or can't drop that kind of cash are now in a prime position to land one of the best sounding DACs that I have ever spent time with at a fraction of the cost of the May DAC. To be clear, I have spent a fair amount of time with the cheaper Delta Sigma offerings out there, and while some of them do certainly sound nice, I like the presentation of the Cyan 2 a lot more than most of them. I'd imagine that Holo Audio is going to do really well with the Cyan 2, and as far as I'm concerned, they certainly deserve it. The Cyan 2 is a wonderful sounding DAC and comes with an easy recommendation from NRD. No, this video was not sponsored. I didn't get paid to say any of this. It's how I actually feel, and I will see you guys in the next video.